Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Gita discussion. Before we enter into the discussion, reading from the 15th chapter this time, we're continuing. It's a brief chapter, it's only 20 verses, and we've done a few so far. We chant these mantras in the Bhakti Yoga lineage, chanting mantras to demonstrate our respect for our teacher or teachers, those who've illuminated our path with the torchlight of knowledge. So out of gratitude, it behooves the practitioner of Bhakti Yoga to do this. So I've been practicing for over 50 years and I have an immense amount of gratitude for my teacher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So I'll chant these mantras, and if you know them, you can chant along. If not, if you have such a person or persons in your life that you have an immense amount of gratitude for in terms of their encouraging you, enthusing you, empowering you on your path, then you can simply meditate on these mantras. They'll be in Sanskrit. And to hear them and to meditate on them is as important. Is the sound okay? Sound level good? Okay, thank you. Om Jnana Timirandasya Vinanjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militanjana Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swa Padantikam Namaho Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatadesho Tarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay. So we're going to start our reading from the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And don't worry, if you're just joining me, do not worry, because the chapters are kind of like a build-up to the conclusion in the 18th chapter. And there's a lot of points that I repeat only because it warrants repetition, and it helps us to understand the current chapter that we're reading even more clearly. So if you have a Gita, it'll be I think we're Sid, you have what what verse?
Yes, where we ended off was you read the translation on verse 7.
Can you repeat that?
The translation on verse 7.
Because my son had the volume down a little bit. Okay, now.
The translation of verse 7.
Verse 7. Thank you so much.
You read the translation. That's where you ended.
Okay. So I'll repeat verse 7 then, just to refresh our memories and to speak a little bit. So this particular chapter is entitled The Yoga of the Supreme. Now, one thing you'll notice about Bhagavad Gita, each chapter talks about yoga. The first chapter is talking about Arjuna Vishada Yoga, which means Arjuna's distress becomes his yoga, his path. And second chapter is Sankhya Yoga, the yoga of analysis. So in each way, Krishna is building, each chapter is building upon the previous chapter to give Arjuna and the world an understanding about self-realization. Now, there's a nice definition of self-realization given by a previous teacher many years ago, and it's as follows, that one who is on the path of self-realization should always endeavor to see the ultimate spiritual nature of all existence. So to see with that kind of vision requires connection, not only to the true nature of the self, but to the supreme self. So thus, this chapter 15, the yoga of the supreme person, is actually Krishna giving us knowledge which makes very clear the distinction between matter and spirit. Just think about this for a second. Matter, according to Gita, is not conscious of itself. So what is the distinction between matter and spirit? Matter is not conscious of its own existence, its being. Therefore, conversely, spirit is full consciousness, or at least the potential for full consciousness. So when I say the potential for full consciousness, it means if we think we're our body, if we think we're male or female, if we think we're part of this material world and we're trying to enjoy this material world, exploit this material world, it means we're not understanding the true nature of the self and the distinction of the self between matter, which is unconscious, earth, water, fire, air, ether. Those are the 5 gross elements of matter. Mind, intelligence, ego are the 3 elements of matter that is subtle. But all 8 of those Krishna describes in previous chapter 7, all 8 of those comprise the material energy. So when you think about it, Earth is not conscious of itself. Water is not conscious of itself. It exists. It is an energy that has a specific function in the cosmic or universal scheme of things. But as far as having consciousness, it's not. So what is our body and mind made of? If we look at it, the very core essential elements, our body is made of earth, anything which is solid, earth, water, anything that is liquid, fire, anything that has heat contains fire, air, if you're breathing, and ether. Ether means space, the space between atoms. And mind, intelligence, and ego, that is what our mental capacity is comprised of. So if our body and our mind are comprised of those elements, it means in and of themselves, they're not conscious of themselves. So what brings consciousness, according to the Bhagavad Gita that we're studying, what infuses consciousness into those elements that gives those elements in the shape of this body, whether it's a male body or a female body, a white body, a black body, a brown body, a red body, a yellow body, etc. What infuses those conglomeration of elements with life, with consciousness? It is the only particle within those billions of cells that has consciousness. And that, according to Gita, is the soul or the self. So self-realization means being conscious of the fact that there is a distinction between matter and spirit, that matter is not conscious of itself, but spirit is. Therefore, according to that logic, we are conscious. You can hear me, you can see me, you can perceive the world around you, you can reason. There's all of these varying symptoms of consciousness that we all possess, which is not the characteristics or the attributes of matter. So therefore, self-realization is to understand that that's who we are and what we are. Self-realization. So in Sri Viraragava's definition, that means we can, I'll read it again. That means one who is on the path of self-realization should always endeavor to see the ultimate spiritual nature of all existence. What is the formula for peace? Do we want peace? Do we want individually? Do we want peace? And collectively, do we want peace? So what is the formula for peace? It's to have the development of understanding self-realization, realization of the true nature of self. And therefore, when we realize that core essential principle, that's what we are, we don't place all of our stock in the body. That's why people are so fearful. Fear manifests itself in many different ways, through anger, through sadness, depression. Fear manifests itself in many different ways. Why are people fearful? People are fearful of aging. People are fearful of getting diseased. People are fearful of being separated from their loved ones. People are fearful of death. But if one understands that that is not me, I mean, I will go through a change because I must go through a change because the elements within my body are ever changing. That's Krishna says that in the second chapter of the Gita. He says that we watch our body. If we do a timeline of our body, there's a nice illustration that you'll see in Srila Prabhupada's Gita of the changing bodies from baby to youth to adolescence to young adulthood to midlife crisis, and from middle age to old age. We see the timeline, and that is the course that is charted for everyone. That course of going through changing bodies. So people become fearful of that. But there's no reason. In Bhagavad Gita, it describes that fear is based on the illusion of we are these bodies and we are growing old, we are going to get sick, we are going to die, when in fact that is simply not the case. The elements, the material elements which comprise the body will go through that change, but the constant factor amidst all that turbulence of change is the self. And that is why self-realization brings about fearlessness. Not recklessness, but fearlessness. In the sense that we see this body, this time that we're spending in this body, as a preparatory time. We're here, we have a purpose of being here. And our purpose is self-realization. We've forgotten. There are many, it's a long discussion as to how and why we've forgotten and ended up in this position. But suffice it to say that we have forgotten our position. And the more we remain in that state of forgetfulness, the more we are enveloped by fear, in fear. So really, once we develop an understanding of the distinction from our body and our senses and our mind and mental capacity, intellectual capacity, and that which is motivating all those elements, the soul, that which is consciousness, emanating conscious throughout our body, just like in this universe. What is the source of light in this universe? It's the sun. And what does the sun do? From its place, its singular place, its situation, it emanates light all throughout the universe. So the soul or the self is likened to the sun in the cosmos or the universe. The sun within our body, the soul, is emanating this energy throughout it, which is motivating it, which means it's start from the beginning. When that cluster of cells called ovum is connected with the sperm, that connection starts the whole process of change, motivates the cells to take the shape according to our karma, male, female, white, black, all the different designations that the body takes on. When that happens, that whole process happens. That's because of the conscious element called the soul is within the heart region of the body, emanating consciousness from the tip of our head to the tip of our toes. Consciousness is there. And how does that go? Through the bloodstream. Have you ever had, where your leg, we call it fall asleep? My son calls it freezing. Daddy, my foot's frozen. Okay, just massage your leg, get the blood flowing again. And shortly thereafter, that's what happens. It's because consciousness is sent throughout the entirety of the body through blood. So self-realization is to become aware of your awareness. In other words, that which is aware of the elements, which are called the body. That's the first level of consciousness. That's called anomoi, the first level of consciousness. As we grow, as the body grows and it has interaction with the outside world, there's a second level of consciousness, and that's called pranamoi. That is, we begin to realize there are other conscious living entities around us. I remember, I grew up always having a dog in our household. We always had. First dog I can remember, I think, was not a Cocker Spaniel. I think it was a Cocker Spaniel. And all the way up to now, I have this beautiful mutt called Gally. So children, they'll see a dog and feel the dog's wet nose or the softness of its hair and realize, oh, that's another life form. And that life form interacts with me. And that life form can make me laugh or make me cry. And if certainly the first life forms that we interact with is mother, and mother's milk, mother's breast, and father. And then we realize as there's a development of consciousness from anomoi to pranamoi, conscious of other living beings, to monomoi, mind. We're aware of our minds, our thought process, and the thought processes of others. All of these developments are as the facility, and the facility that we have, being that it's in good working order, allows us or facilitates the development of consciousness. Now, sometimes the facility or the body or the mind is not in good working order. There might be something wrong with it, something in disrepair, and therefore there may be a limitation. Consciousness may not grow beyond 8, 9 years old. So this is all an explanation just to give us an understanding of this distinction between matter and spirit. And Krishna uses a nice metaphor in the beginning of this chapter. He says that this material world and all that it encompasses is like a tree. Have you ever seen a banyan tree? Yeah? Banyan trees are amazing. You see some banyan trees that are thousands of years old. In India, I've seen some incredible banyan trees. And Krishna uses the analogy in the first part of the 15th chapter of the banyan tree. But what he says is, he uses it as a metaphor, and he says the banyan tree, which is the material world, is topsy-turvy, meaning the branches are growing down and the roots are growing up. Now, where does that exist? Does it exist in the material world, where the tree, the branches are growing down and the roots are growing up? The only place that it exists is in a reflection. If you are standing on the other side of a lake and there's a tree on the bank of that lake and it's reflected and you're on the other side, you will see in that reflection the branches going down, the roots going up. So the metaphor is used by Krishna to let us understand that when we think we are the body, when we think that the only purpose of being in this world is just for enjoyment, sensory enjoyment, that is a topsy-turvy perspective of what reality is. The reality in that case is the real tree, and the reflection is not reality. It appears in that particular way. But the real tree has its roots growing down with the branches growing up. So that's why Krishna uses that reflection as a metaphor for this world. When we're existing in this world, all of the leaves, the twigs, the branches that are there are going in the opposite direction. And we are, according to our level of consciousness and our bodily development, etc., we're somewhere within the construct of that reflection. Thinking, branches are going down, roots are going up. Cultivating a perspective that is topsy-turvy. So what does that mean? That means, topsy-turvy means self-centered perspective, narcissistic perspective, is not the real perspective. And that, my friends, that's the cause of a lot of our suffering. When we buy into the reflection rather than into the reality. Like fear of death. What is reality? There is no death. There's change. Krishna uses the metaphor in the second chapter that just as you change your garments, and put on new garments, like today I'm wearing a green shirt. Yesterday I was wearing a red shirt. And Monday I was wearing a gray shirt. And tomorrow I'll probably wear a yellow shirt. And if you're wondering how I remember all these things, it's because in our household, according to the day, Luna, the moon day requires light color. Then Tuesday, the Mars day is red color. So we kind of follow that. And that's how I'm able to remember. Not that I have such a clear memory. But the point is, the garments. I change my garment, but do I change? No. So Krishna says that's what happens with the body. So do you have an anxiety attack when you have to change your garments? Oh no, I've got to take off my green shirt. I really love this green shirt. I got to take it off. And tomorrow I got to put on a yellow shirt. Oh my God, no. You don't go into a panic attack because of that. You realize it's a change of garment. And there's a smooth transition when you change the garment. So for a self-realized soul has the awareness that all life is spiritual, including me and my life. So there's no need. That's called dhira. A person who understands that is not bewildered by such a change. That's called a dhira, or a sober person, a person who can consider. Now, we can't be on that level unless we're equipped with knowledge. Knowledge is first called jnana. That means knowledge. But the Bhakti Yoga system turns knowledge into vijnana, or realization. It's not only that you can memorize, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego. Those are the It's not only you memorize that, but you begin to realize that. You begin to experience the fact that I am not the body. And through cultivation, proper cultivation, we can realize that. We can actually come to experience life's breath, life's movement, the movement and breath of other living entities, and the life which permeates this entire universe. We can actually experience that fact and see with that perspective. That's called Tattva Darshani. Darshan means see, to see. And Tattva means truth, means truth seer. Not dream seer, but truth seer, reality seer, not illusion seer. And if we do not cultivate knowledge, that's called tamas. Tama means ignorance. That means we're in ignorance, that's all. There's nothing wrong with us. It's just the fact that we don't know. The majority of people in this world are intrinsically good, intrinsically have the potential for knowledge, self-knowledge, happiness, bliss, and not just bliss due to senses connecting with sense objects and then the thrill you get out of that. No, it's a happiness which is greater than that. There's actually 3 levels of happiness. Happiness that comes from the senses interacting with the objects of the senses. For instance, when the tongue tastes something delicious, that's pleasurable, right? What if you bite into an apple and then when you look at the apple, there's half a worm there? That actually happened to a friend of mine. Immediately, the juiciness and the sweetness of the apple has all gone with the realization he's got half a worm in his mouth. So this kind of sense, and that's kind of a metaphor for what goes on when we investing in just seeking happiness through the senses. First off, there's disappointment. But secondly, there's the functionality of the senses diminish with age. You can't see as well, right? When did you put on glasses? For some of us, I think I was diagnosed with astigmatism when I was 10 years old. But some people who go through life with 20/20 vision, and when they hit 50 years old, then they can't see as well. Hey, what's happening here? I used to be able to read that. I can't read that anymore. Now I have to put glasses on. So we begin to realize I can't hear as well. I can't see as well. Even my sense of taste, my sense of smell is not as sharp, as acute as it used to be. Especially if any of you have had COVID. I don't know if there was a residual effect, but I know my wife and I, when we were in Puerto Rico, and my wife worked in a hospital, we got COVID. And I realized I had COVID. First I thought I had a flu, but I realized I had COVID when I couldn't smell anything. And then, gradually as we got better, the sense of smell came back, but it never came back as strong as it was. So, I'm in my 74th year, so I have to live with the reality that my eyes are getting a little dimmer, my hearing is not so acute, my sense of taste, my smell, etc. All of these things are diminishing. And that's just reality. And you could fight it and come up with all the cosmetics you want, but the reality is that that is what's going to happen to the lump of elements. It's going to go through change. Every 7 years, We have a whole new set of cells, millions and millions of cells in our body. Every 7 years it's described that there's like a whole brand new set. So this is the changing body. So realization, self-realization means knowledge. The tree, the metaphor, the reflection, the unreal reflection. How Krishna says in the Gita, we have to cut that down. We have to cut that illusion down. How do we do it? With the acts of knowledge. That's why Krishna goes through this extent to give us this knowledge, to give us the facility to cultivate the proper perspective. And when we cultivate the proper perspective, then we're able to see this very clearly. Krishna says in the 7th verse, the living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. That underscoring the fact that we are eternal parts of the Supreme Eternal. Due to conditioned life means is when we take birth in this world and we're conditioned to think we're the body and the goal of life is to exploit this world and what the world has to offer through the body and the senses, etc. So they are struggling very hard with the 6 senses, which include the mind. Our greatest obstacle, and thus the emphasis of yoga, is the mind. The unbridled, unregulated mind. That's our greatest obstacle. That's why the emphasis, no matter what yoga process you may be involved in or may study, the emphasis is on, first and foremost, controlling the mind. How to bring the mind under control. The secondary effect of doing that is peace, is calmness. But the primary effect of bringing your mind under control is just like a lake. If a lake the water is rough because of wind and so many other natural forces, it's very difficult to see your reflection in that lake. So if the mind is not steady and stable and calm, then we only see the waves. And what are the waves in the mind? It's the thoughts. When I hit people with the question that you're not, or the proposal that you're not your thoughts, then they say, oh, then what am I if I'm not my thoughts? Your thoughts, the Sanskrit word is vritti, and vritti means the turning. And it simply means that when the senses reach out into the world and grabs information and brings it back into the mind, then the result of that is vrittis. They're the results of impressions that are coming, data that's coming to us as the senses reach out. But who is perceiving that data? Who is becoming aware of that data? Sitting back, who's the observer that is aware of that sensory input? And it occurs in many different ways. As it happens, as it's brought in, the effect that happens to you when the sensory input is brought in, when it's stored, memory of it, again, you relive it, Many of us develop a narrative based on how we cultivate our life. And that narrative plays over and over again. Oh, you're not good enough, or you can't do this, you can't do that. It's a cultivated narrative, which comes from acute or heightened awareness of the sensory input. And then all of the situations and circumstances and conditionings, and that's family, your father and your mother and their influence, and your siblings and their influence, and then your extended network and their influence, that creates our conditioning. In other words, if you have a father who's always telling you, oh, you're not good enough, or you can't do a damn thing, or, then what's the narrative that develops? Because what's that input? What's the input been? That kind of negative input. And then we develop a narrative, and we remember that, and we play it over and over and over again. And that creates a lot of suffering. There's, when you have a memory there, that memory is like a nail going into the board. And then when it comes out, you pull the nail out and there's damage that's done to the board. So, when we get that kind of input, negative input, that's why one of the main things in developing or cultivating a yogic lifestyle is to cultivate a peaceful mind, a calm mind. Yogas chitta britti nirodha, to contemplate, to cultivate through the process of yoga a peaceful mind. Also, to cultivate an understanding of what will bring us a peaceful mind. And one of the strongest components of creating a positive narrative, a proper perspective of life and the purpose of life, is proper association. Who you hang out with. That's what conditioned you in the way we've been conditioned. It's what we've been exposed to. So a person who becomes aware of these, what are they doing? With a little bit of knowledge, we're chipping away at that illusion. And then the person who's on the path of self-realization has questions that they should always be asking themselves. And what are those questions? There was a conversation in a sacred text called Chaitanya Charitamrita between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sanatana Goswami. And Sanatana Goswami was on this path. And so he asked the question, who am I? And I remember Srila Prabhupada, my spiritual teacher, my guru, in the commentary of that particular verse, he said, this is the beginning of human life. Because what is the difference between us and animal life? An animal sleeps. My dog loves to sleep outside on the pavers. Now, could you imagine? And he snores and he dreams and he rolls, and so he's happy sleeping on pavers, concrete pavers. And we have our nice number bed and Posturepedic, but we're sleeping, and half of us don't even have a restful sleep. But that dog's out there on those pavers sleeping and rolling around and dreaming of the next bone or the next iguana he's going to catch. And so animal sleeping, human sleeps. What's the difference? An animal eats, we eat. You can choose the nicest, juiciest, most delicious food that you can think of. When he sees his dog food, he's like, yay, happy, happy. Or sometimes I'll give him a little prasadam, prasadam. Yay, he's happy. He's like, his tail wags so fast and furious it can knock you over. So he's eating and he's happy. He's sleeping. He's happy on the pavers. He's defending. He's definitely taken on the role of guardian of our property. And I have like a couple of pictures of him sitting, observing. He has his purpose in life. Human beings have their purpose in life. In fact, if a human being does not cultivate a purpose in life, they can never be happy. So it may be a purpose via your job. It may be a purpose in life via your kids or other relationship. Maybe some purpose in life. So eating, sleeping, defending, having purpose, mating, producing, children, etc. That is not what distinguishes human from animal. What distinguishes human from animal is the ability to look at the world around us and say, who am I? And what is my purpose in being here? I remember that epiphany. It was the winter of 1971, and I remember walking outside after doing the same old again and again and thinking to myself, is this my purpose in life? And I remember looking up into the stars and asking God, please, what is my purpose? So a person who is serious about self-realization asks the question, who am I? What is my purpose? And the one thing we have to contend with when asking that question is pride. Because pride causes us to have an overestimation of ourselves and the inability to live up to that estimation causes despair. So that's one question that we should ask. Who am I? What is my purpose of life? And to the cultivation of a humble attitude. We see the beauty and the greatness of others as we see the beauty of ourselves, but we should also see that in others. Have the keen eye to look at with great appreciation and respect those qualities in others. And then, who am I? Then the next question is there a process that can answer that question? And ta-da, we have the Bhagavad Gita. The whole purpose of Gita is to give us a process by which it will facilitate coming up with knowledge that will answer that question. Yoga. 18 chapters of yoga in its various forms, in its Arjuna Vishada Yoga, in its Sankhya Yoga, in its Karma Yoga, in its Jnana Yoga, in this chapter, Purushottam Yoga, the yoga of the Supreme, Krishna gives us various angles. He clarifies our vision, our perspective, and gives us a finer and finer tuned perspective to give us that knowledge by which we can see who am I and what is my purpose in this world. So what is that process? Yoga. And specifically, Krishna goes through Dhyana Yoga, yoga of meditation, Jnana Yoga, the yoga of knowledge, Karma Yoga, the yoga of action. But in the at the end of the 6th chapter of the Gita, Arjuna asks, you're giving me so much. Is there one that rises above? Is there cream in this milk that you're giving me? In the introduction to Srila Prabhupada's Gita, he talks about the calf giving milk and the cream which is rising. So is there cream in this milk, in this knowledge that you're giving me? Is there something which rises? And Krishna says, yes, it's called Bhakti Yoga. And then immediately he launches into the 7th chapter, 7th chapter through 12th chapter, he talks about Bhakti. So yoga of love and devotion that can permeate all other yoga systems, and your whole life. The yoga of love and devotion. So that is the process. And Krishna goes through great lengths to describe what are these yoga systems. Then he says in yoga, for instance, he says we must instill a culture. A culture means to cultivate something. So a culture of balance. That's in I believe the 6th chapter. Krishna talks about a culture of balance. Not eating too much, not eating too little, not sleeping too much, not sleeping too little, not too much recreation, not too little recreation. Just finding your balance. So it means cultivating so that we have values, goals, and a mindset of healthy living. Healthy means physically, mentally, intellectually living. Eating properly, sleeping properly, cleanliness, dress, characteristic features of our everyday existence. We look at that. The ability to tap into a universal culture, that beyond our immediate culture, that there is a universal culture, which means a lifestyle that can bring us to higher realization, the realization of the self. Bringing us, cultivating and understanding that there is good pain and bad pain. Oftentimes, people try to develop a philosophy that eliminates all suffering. When you work out, do you get sore? Right? If you do new exercise or if you start exercising, do you get sore? Good pain or bad pain? Good pain, right? So there is good pain in this world. There are things. My mantra that I chant to myself all the time is that this is not done to me, it is done for me. Whatever is happening to me is not done to me. It's not done by God as punishment, that I'm such an evil person. But God is so loving and so kind and so compassionate. He's doing it for me. Teach me a lesson. Good pain. As opposed to bad pain, which is usually self-inflicted. So understand that, a realization of that. Next question is, if Krishna is emphasizing yoga and Gita as the process, how do I know this process, and even if I come in contact with this process, how do I learn it? Krishna very clearly answers that in the 4th chapter. Find someone who is living the process. Find the teacher who's living the process and who is a living, breathing, walking, talking example of the process. It's not just something academic. Vedeshu durlabham adurlabham atma bhakto. It's not just some knowledge that you accumulate and then you put a certificate on your wall. I am self-realized because I've taken this course. It's something that has to be assimilated and lived. And when you find someone who has assimilated it into their life, then you go to that person and you say, please teach me. So what is the process? Yoga is the process. How do I know what yoga is and how to practice it? Find that teacher. Then, so what does a teacher look like? And then in the Gita and in other subsequent sacred texts, very elaborate description of what a true teacher is, what a true teacher looks like, so that you cannot be fooled. There's fool's gold and real gold. And you must know the difference between what is fool's gold and real gold. And why do they call it fool's gold? Because you're thinking it's something it's not. So knowledge of what is a teacher, so that you do not think, oh, this person is such a great person, I bow down to you, I do this, I do that. You're able to objectively look at the characteristics, the attributes, the behavior, the mood of that person. It's not only that the person sits on a big seat and espouses philosophy, but what is the mood of that person? Is that person kind, compassionate, friendly, mutually respectful? Because a person who is a real teacher is humble. That person doesn't demand respect. That person commands respect by virtue of their kindness, their compassion, their friendliness, their respect, their ability to show you respect. Even you may be the student. They can show you respect and appreciate you for who you are and for your journey and for your position on your journey. That's how you recognize. Do not be fooled by the outer trappings. This is why some people stay away, because they've seen in the past that a person poses in a position and they're not really there. And then you take it on, that person is a teacher, and that teacher proves not to be someone who's qualified. So educate yourself, be an educated consumer, and it'll answer the question of what does a teacher look like? How do they walk? How do they talk? Do they walk the walk and talk the talk? And then a very important question is, what is God? What is the Supreme? What does that mean? Now this, my friends, is a very long conversation, and we can take this in little bites rather than big bites because I've just run out of time. So it's a nice place to begin with in our next class together, which will be next Wednesday. So today's the 6th, so it'll be the 13th, and we'll pick up where we left off on the topic of what is God, because this chapter is the yoga of the Supreme Person, talking exactly about that. So thank you so much for being here with me this evening. I am so greatly appreciative of having your association. You are all an inspiration in my life to demonstrate that you are willing to spend time in hearing this, meditating on this kind of knowledge that'll set us on our course, and keep us on our course. Does anyone have any question or comment they would like to ask? Sid, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I do. When you allude to good pain and bad pain, isn't all pain good if you learn from it?
That's a very good observation. Yeah. Yeah. If you learn, then it is no longer pain, and it's a lesson.
Exactly.
Like a mistake. A mistake, if you continue to make it again and again, and what have but if you learn from that mistake, or if a bad pain, self-inflicted, and then you realize, oh, wow, I'm suffering not because of the other person or this external circumstance, because of what I did. Yeah, then you transform it into a learning experience. Yes, very, very good, astute observation.
You.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to share either a realization, observation, or may have a question? Be happy to try to address it. Okay, we're all good? Well, I'm happy to hear that. Okay, so you all kindly have a happy, healthy, and holy week coming up, and I very much look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Thank you.
That's Sandy there. Oh, I thought I recognized you.
Yeah, grateful to be able to catch the conversation today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandy, I haven't spoken to you in a while, but thank you for, I know you're a busy yoga teacher.
I follow along with you, so when it works out, I'm lucky to get to be in just bathe in this matter. So thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you.
Sandy, all the lessons are on YouTube.
Oh.
Yeah, I have a page. The page is under my Larry Puglisi, and all of these classes from when we first started out, first chapter, they're all there. So if you go to YouTube, my YouTube channel, Larry Puglisi, you'll see all the classes there, and you can at your leisure.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for saying that, Sid. I really appreciate that. I'm gonna have some work cut out for me. I can't wait to dive in. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Sandy. I know you're very influential on your students in terms of bhakti. I always see you prodding them, to think deeply about what they're doing, and so that's the kind of yoga teacher we need out there. So thanks again. Okay, everyone. Again, we'll see you next week. By Krishna's.
Thank you.